welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I am finally gonna be doing the palette tag video. I do believe that this video idea was created by Allie Glines and Samantha March, but I actually got the idea from Miss Lynette, who is the creator of the beauty channel London Makeup Artistry. So yes, I will link her video right down below, and make sure you subscribe to my girl. So I have gathered all of my palettes from biggest to smallest to oldest to whatever. So if you guys would like to see the rundown of all of my palettes with the palette tag video, just make sure you keep on watching. So yes, I think that the idea for this video is a really good idea because it got me to looking through my makeup palettes, and I saw some palettes that I have not used in a long time. It gave me, you know, I was like, okay, I need to show that palette some love because some of these damn palettes cost a lot of money. So actually, the first one on the list, number one, is to show your newest palette. Actually, my newest palette that I did recently order, the last thing that I ordered is not here yet. I ordered the Makeup Revolution times Tammy collection, so that is en route and I have not received it yet. So that would make my Juvia's, the Festival palette, and the Zulu palette my newest palette. So I actually did a video using the Zulu, well, I kind of did a video using the Zulu palette, which is this one right here. And if you have not seen it, I will link it right up here. So yes, here is the Zulu palette, and then also the Festival palette. So yes, I did explain in that video that it was my very first time using Juvia's Place makeup products, and I really love the eyeshadow formula. So I am really excited about going back to purchase more. So yes, that would make my Zulu and Festival my newest palettes. So next on the list is to show your oldest palette. So I don't have my oldest palette because when I first got into makeup, about 2009 is when I really started to purchase makeup palettes and makeup and things like that. So my very first palette would have been a Coastal Scents palette. I have since given that away years and years ago. And then also I recently decluttered a lot of my eyeshadow palettes sometimes last year. So I gave a lot of my palettes away. But the oldest thing that I can find in my collection is this MAC quad that I actually created. So I do believe that this was purchased in 2009. So yes, it is expired, and no, I do not use it. But you know, you just can't part ways with MAC products. I just can't, because to me, MAC kind of was there in the beginning of my journey with me learning how to do makeup. It was there with me when I worked at a spa, when I was a makeup artist, and I use a lot of MAC products. So I don't know, I just can't part ways with MAC. So this that I have currently in all of the palettes is my oldest makeup palette. So yes. Okay, so next up is your most expensive palette. So my most expensive palette is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. Although I do own several Pat McGrath palettes, I own several Natasha Denona palettes. The reason why this one is my most expensive palette because it is the only one that I paid full price for. So this palette does retail for $129. Yes, and I wanted this palette so bad, so I bit the bullet and I paid $129 for it. So I didn't get it on sale. I didn't get it during a Sephora sale. I didn't get it doing nothing. I bought the palette because I really, really wanted it. I do use it a lot. I don't use it every day, but I use it whenever I feel like I just want like a natural eye or something like that. I always go back to this one. Also, when I travel, I usually just take this one. So yes, so that would make my Natasha Denona Biba palette my most expensive palette. So next up on the list would be your most affordable palette. So looking through all of my makeup palettes in my collection, the only one that I can come across is the Maybelline Nude of New York palette. And I'm actually surprised that I still have this because I did tell my daughter that I would give it to her, but I thought I did, but I guess I didn't. So yes, this is my most affordable palette, as well as one of probably a handful of the only drugstore palettes that I own. But this palette is actually really good. The mattes in this palette work amazing. The shimmers are okay, but they work best when you use either your finger or you wet your brush. But this palette is really affordable. You can use it for every day. You can get some really amped up or natural looks out of this palette. So if you don't want to spend a lot of money on eyeshadow palettes and you just want something that you can afford and you got a lot of neutral and natural looks that you can get out, this is a good one. So yes, I did purchase this palette at Ulta, but you can also get it at places like Walmart. You can get it at Walgreens, or you can get it at CVS. Any place that sells drugstore makeup, you can purchase this palette. So yes, it is a good palette. So this is my most affordable palette. So next up on the list would be your everyday palette. I technically don't have an everyday palette because my everyday for work is usually just throwing bronzer in my crease. But I will go ahead and pick the new Pat McGrath Divine Rose 2 palette just because it is a palette that I have been using quite often, especially on the weekend. I've been using it. Sometimes I wear it to work because shades like Rose Blush and something, what other shade is in here? I don't know. Extreme Burgundy. So Extreme Burgundy and Rose Blush, I think that's what it's called. Anyway, they are really good for every day. So if I do decide that I want to add some color to my look when I go to my everyday job, I will. I have lately been reaching for this one. So I guess I can say that this is my everyday palette, even though it's not, because like I said, for work, I usually just throw bronzer in my crease and keep it moving. But this has been a go-to palette of mine and I love it. So next up on the list is to show your most colorful palette. So that would have to be my ABH Norvina Volume 3 palette. I actually really like this palette. I used it a few times. I did use it in a video, and if you have not seen it, I will link it right up here. But yes, this right now is my most colorful palette. I love this palette because the formula in this palette is like really good. And to me, they work way better than just a normal ABH eyeshadow palette. The Norvina shadows, I don't know. It's a pigment palette, but the formula is good. So yes, this would be my most colorful palette. I think they retail for about $60, but I did get mine on sale because I don't usually pay full price for anything with the exception of that Beaver palette. But yes, this is a really good palette. She has 4 of them. She has volume 1, 2, 3, and volume 4, but out of all of them, this was the one that I gravitated to the most, being that blue is actually my favorite color. So yes, this is my most colorful palette. Okay, so next up on the list is to show your smallest palette. So my smallest palette is actually the one that I am wearing on my eyes today. It is the Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions palette. She had actually 3 palettes in this collection. She had, I think it was it light, medium, and dark, or light, medium, and deep? I'm not exactly sure, but I actually only own one of them. So that is the medium palette. So I am wearing this palette on my eyes today. So yes, sorry I did not film this look. It was just as I was looking through my palettes trying to decide what I was going to choose for this video, I ran across this one and I was like, hey, I have not used that palette in so long. So yes, that is the reason why it's on my eyes. So I actually really like this palette. The formula in here is really good. I really can't compare it to any of Huda's big palettes because I don't own any of them. This is actually the only Huda Beauty palette that I have. I have other items from her makeup collection, but this is the only eyeshadow palette that I own from Huda. But it actually is a really good palette. I mean, a little expensive because I believe it's like $29 or $30 for this little bitty palette, but it's good. So if you haven't tried any of the Nude Obsession palettes from Huda, they are really good. And I do believe I actually have a video somewhere way down there. So yes, if I can find it, I will link it right up here. Talking about if I can find it, it's not like I have that many. But yes, this is actually a good palette. So if you haven't tried it, I would. So the next thing on the list is to show your biggest palette. So actually the ABH Norvina Volume 3 is actually, is this Volume 2 or Volume 3? This is Volume 2. Wait a minute. I think I told y'all this is volume 3. This is volume 2. So this is actually my most colorful and my biggest. So if I had my Tammy Revolution palette, that would actually be my biggest. I'm not really into big palettes, but I'm trying to expand, you know, because I think I'm rich, so all I want to do is spend my money on luxury makeup palettes. Yes, so this actually is my biggest and my most colorful, so since I already talked about it, I'm really not going to talk about it again. So yes, this is my biggest palette. So next up will be to show the palette with the best memory. So after looking through all of my palettes, and of course I have not shown all the palettes that I own, the only thing that I can come up with is my Perception palette by Makeup Shayla and ColourPop. And the only reason why this palette is the best memory for me is because this is actually the palette that I use to actually start my channel. So I'm not sure that the video is down there because I think I may have made it private because it was way at the beginning and your girl was a little whack. I'm not gonna say I'm way better, but I'm better than that. So yes, this palette was used to actually help me start my channel, and for a while this is the only palette that I use and the only palette that I would take with me to travel. So I actually like this palette. I have been having it a while, so I believe the eyeshadows in here are pretty dried out. But you know, when you have that attachment to certain makeup products, you just can't throw it out. So that's actually how I feel about this one. So yes, this is the palette with the most memory. So next up on the list will be to show your palette or any palette in your collection that is worth the hype. So the only palette that I can come up with would be my Pat McGrath Mothership 5 palette, the Bronze Seduction. Everyone loved this palette. So anyone who is new to Pat McGrath, they usually start off with this palette. I actually started off with the Bronze Seduction Mothership 5 palette. This palette has also won, I think, an allure reward before, or award, however you want to say it. But yes, everyone loves this palette. Mothership 5 from Pat McGrath is probably everyone's most favorite Mothership palette, but it was my favorite until she came out with Divine Rose 2. So I actually love both of them kind of equally, but Divine Rose 2 just a little bit more. So yeah, so this palette it does retail for $125 if you are new to Pat McGrath or you don't own any of her products. But this palette is actually worth the hype. So if you wanted to get into using Pat McGrath, probably you should start here because I did, and everyone who wants to buy Pat McGrath usually does too. So yes, Mothership 5 is a palette that's actually worth the hype. So next up on the list would be the palette that is not worth the hype. So, okay, the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. All I can say about this palette is I'm happy that I did not pay full price for it, okay? I mean, the palette is fine if you are just a regular person who just does everyday looks and you just like to have warm, neutral looks. This palette is perfect for you, and it may could be the only one that you ever need. But for me, I just really wasn't impressed with this palette, and I just don't reach for it a lot, period. I have used it on my channel before, but that's about it. I don't really use it outside of my channel. So it is one that I just barely reach for, and I just really agree with this palette not being worth the hype. So if I had to pay full price, it does retail for $129. I probably wouldn't have bought it, but I actually got this palette 50% off. So I did take advantage to get the palette because when this palette came out years ago, it would never stay in stock. Everybody had to have it. It would come in stock, they would buy it up, and it would be gone again. I mean, it would come in stock, just repeat it, but everybody raved about this palette. Everybody had to have this palette. I mean, it's a good palette, but to me, it's just really not worth the hype. So I'm just really happy that I didn't pay full price for it. So, but I'm not going to bash Natasha that much, but yes, not worth the hype. So next on the list will be your favorite palette from your favorite brand. So I already talked about Mother's palette, the Divine Rose 2. This is Mothership 8. So Pat McGrath is my favorite brand. She's also Black owned. So yes, I will have to go back to the Divine Rose palette. This is my favorite palette from my favorite brand. So since we already talked about it, I'm not going to talk about it again, but I really love this palette. And if you don't have it, if you can catch it available, I would pick this palette up. It really is worth everything that it costs. The formula in her eyeshadow palettes are amazing. So yes, this will have to be my favorite palette from my favorite brand. So next up on the list would have been to show your most used palette. I really don't have a palette that is most used, so I'm basically just going to put my own twist on this whole thing. I'm going to switch out the most used palette to my favorite palette by a Black creator. So yes, my favorite palette by a Black creator would have to be the collab with Jackie Aina and Anastasia Beverly Hills. I really don't show this palette enough love, but this is my favorite palette by a collaboration with a major brand and a Black beauty creator. So, there is a lot of places that you cannot get this palette anymore. I don't think you can get it at Sephora. You probably can still purchase it on abh.com. I believe I saw it on Beautylish, and it is like marked down to like $31, I believe. I'm not sure. But yes, if you don't have this palette and you didn't get a chance to pick it up when it was released, it is a limited edition palette. So if you can find it, I suggest you get it. I mean, mainly to support a Black beauty creator for number one. And then if you are a woman of color, you have a deeper skin tone, this palette has some of the best transition shades out there, ones that won't look ashy on you. And you know when an eyeshadow look ashy. Okay, so yes, this palette has some of the best transition shades out there for women with deeper skin tones. So if you can find it, I really do suggest you get it. Like I said, even if you're not going to use it, just to support a sister, that would be an amazing thing to do. But if you can find it, because I do know that it's not available in a lot of places, but check Beautylish, because I do believe that I saw it on there and it was on sale for like $31. So guys, that will be all for today's video. Everything that I have on my face, I will have listed down below in the description box. If you are not subscribed, I really do hope you would take the time to do so. Make sure you tap that subscribe button. Don't forget to hit that notification bell right next to the subscribe button. That way you are always notified and you never miss any of my uploads. So I had a really good time doing this video. I'm so happy that I got to see a lot of palettes that I haven't actually used in a long time. And if you haven't noticed, I am in a different area of my house. I mean, you know, you can do that when you're home by yourself. So, but that is it. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye, guys.